You are 3 years old, and this is the best day of your entire life so far. There's chocolate cake, there are candles, and everyone you love is singing your name. You feel pure, uncomplicated joy in a way you might never quite reach again. And today, you cannot remember a single second of it. Here's the part nobody tells you about your own childhood. Almost everything that happened to you before age 3 or 4 is simply gone. Not fuzzy, not faded, gone like it happened to someone else entirely. Scientists call this childhood amnesia, and nearly every human on Earth has it. You spent roughly 1,000 days alive with no lasting memory of any of them. And the reason your brain erased them is stranger than plain forgetting. Stay with me. First, let's be clear about what we are actually missing here. Try to recall your earliest memory, the very first thing you can picture. For most people, that memory lands somewhere around age 3.5. Anything you remember before that is almost always borrowed, not truly real. You saw the photo, you heard the family story, and your brain quietly filled in the rest. Psychologists call these false memories, and yours feel exactly as real as true ones. In one study, adults confidently recalled events that researchers had completely made up. Some even described the smells and the weather. None of it ever happened. Now here is what makes this genuinely bizarre. Babies are not stupid. A 1-year-old learns language, faces, and how the whole world works at terrifying speed. Their brains form 1 million new neural connections every single second. So the memories are clearly being made. The real problem is keeping them. For decades, the blame fell on one small, curled structure deep in your brain. Meet the hippocampus, your brain's librarian for long-term memories. It takes a fleeting experience and files it away so you can find it later. In a baby, this librarian has basically just shown up for its first day of work. The hippocampus isn't fully wired until somewhere around age 3 or 4. So for years, the story was simple. No finished librarian, no filed memories. It is a clean, satisfying explanation. It is also almost certainly incomplete. Because babies absolutely can form memories, we can watch them do it. Show a 6-month-old how to make a mobile move by kicking, and they learn the trick. They will kick for it again days later. The memory was clearly there. But stretch that gap to a few weeks, and the memory quietly vanishes. So the real question isn't why babies can't make memories. The real question is why those memories refuse to stick around. And the leading suspect is the strangest villain in all of neuroscience. Your baby brain has a superpower that is also, accidentally, a memory shredder. It's called neurogenesis, the constant birth of brand new brain cells. In your first years, your brain produces new neurons at an explosive rate. That sounds wonderful, and for learning, it absolutely is. But every new neuron has to wire itself into the existing network. Imagine hiring new librarians who rearrange every shelf the moment they arrive. Each new connection can overwrite or scramble the delicate memory already stored there. So, the memory of your 3rd birthday gets slowly buried under a flood of new wiring. In one mouse study, boosting neurogenesis actually erased memories the animals already had. Slow that neuron growth down, and suddenly the old memories survived. The very thing making you smart was quietly deleting your past. But a leaky librarian and a shredder still don't explain everything. Because the biggest reason you forgot is not in your brain at all, it's in a word. That word is language. Before you had words, your brain had no labels to file anything under. Your first 2 years ran on raw sensation, streaming in with 0 captions. And a memory saved without words is a file your adult mind can't open. In 2002, scientists in New Zealand built the perfect trap to prove it. They showed toddlers a magic machine that could shrink toys. A big teddy bear went in, and a tiny copy came out. For a 2-year-old, This is the single greatest event in recorded history. 6 months later, the researchers invited the same children back. The kids remembered the machine but only described it with words they had known back then. Words learned after the event were useless. The memory stayed sealed in its wordless format. It's like saving your whole childhood on a floppy disk, then losing the drive. Because your brain doesn't archive raw footage, it archives stories. A memory only earns a permanent shelf once it has a plot. And every story needs one thing your baby brain was still missing: a main character. That main character is you, and you had to be born a second time. Scientists can pinpoint that birth with a test involving a mirror and a red dot. They quietly dab a red dot on a baby's nose and set the baby before a mirror. Before 18 months, the baby waves at the reflection like it's a friendly stranger. The baby sees a baby, it just has no idea that baby is them. Then, around 18 to 24 months, something historic happens. The toddler reaches up and touches their own nose. That tiny gesture is a birth announcement. The self just came online. Psychologists Howe and Courage argue autobiographical memory can't start a single day earlier. Because without an I, things still happen, they just happen to nobody. It's like filming a whole movie before the lead actor shows up. Once the self arrives, the brain finally has a protagonist to pin memories on. But a protagonist alone isn't enough. Every story also needs a narrator. And your first narrator wasn't you, it was whoever tucked you in at night. In the 1990s, psychologists started recording how parents talk about the past with their kids. They found two wildly different styles of family storytelling. Elaborative parents turn bedtime chats into full adventures and invite the child to co-write them. Repetitive parents run it like a pop quiz. What color was the bus? Correct. Good night. Kids of the storyteller parents grow up with earlier, richer first memories. In other words, remembering your own life is a skill someone taught you. Zoom out, and whole cultures move the starting line of memory. The average Western adult's earliest memory lands around age 3.5. In studies of Chinese adults, that line slides closer to age 4. But Maori adults in New Zealand remember back to age 2.5, the world record. In Maori culture, a child's life story is a family treasure, retold from day one. The more your world narrates you, the earlier your memory switches on. Scientists call this sliding starting line the offset of childhood amnesia. So here is the full recipe for a memory that lasts a lifetime. Ingredient 1. Words to caption the experience. Ingredient 2. An E to star in it. Ingredient 3. A narrator to help you tell it until you can tell it alone. At your 3rd birthday, you had the cake but barely any of the other ingredients. No story got written, so the whole day was quietly handed back to the void. But deleted, it turns out, is not the same as gone. The day didn't disappear. It sank to a level of your mind you can no longer read from. Because you don't have one memory system, you have two, and only one of them forgets. The first is explicit memory. Names, dates, that birthday, the stuff you can consciously call up. It's the newest system, the slowest to mature, and the first to lose your early years. The second is implicit memory, and it was already working long before you were born. Implicit memory doesn't store your stories. It stores what your body already knows how to do. Picture an iceberg. Everything you can recall is the tip. Everything running you is underneath. You learned to walk as a baby. You kept the skill and lost every single lesson. The same is true for your native language absorbed before memory, then wired in for life. That weird specific fear you can't explain, it may be a memory you can't consciously reach. How you were held as an infant quietly shaped how you trust and love as an adult. Psychologists call it attachment, a template for closeness, written before you had words. It's why a specific smell or an old teddy bear can flood you with a feeling you can't place. Your adult personality is built on a foundation you were never handed the blueprint to. Childhood amnesia erases the highlight reel. It never touches the machinery running underneath. So the memories aren't gone. They just stopped being things you could tell. Which raises the real question. Why would evolution build a brain that deletes its own childhood? Here's the twist. The forgetting isn't a glitch, it's the point. A baby's brain has one urgent job, and it isn't keeping a diary. It's learning the rules of the entire world from scratch fast and all at once. And learning that fast means constantly ripping up old wiring and laying down new wiring. Every rewire scrambles the exact address where an older memory was filed. Remember neurogenesis? The memory shredder from earlier? This is exactly why it's allowed to shred. A brain can be a great recorder or a great learner. In infancy, it can't be both. Evolution picked learning. The lost birthdays are the receipt it paid for it. There's a second payoff. You don't need the episode. You need the lesson it left behind. You kept fires hot. You didn't need to keep the exact afternoon you learned it. Your infant brain compressed 1,000 messy days into clean, usable knowledge. Keeping every raw, unfiltered memory wouldn't be a superpower. It'd be a curse. The rare people who forget almost nothing describe it as exhausting, not magical. Forgetting your first years isn't the system failing, it's the system doing its job perfectly. Which brings us all the way back to a cake, 3 candles, and a joy you'll never recall. So let's return to that third birthday party one last time. The toddler blowing out those candles is you, and you will never remember being them. The laughter, the frosting on your fingers, the faces around the table, all of it, gone. But gone was never the same as wasted. That afternoon was doing quiet work on the person you'd become. The safety in that room became part of how safe the whole world feels to you now. The words sung around you became bricks in the language you now think in. Even the taste of chocolate and the ritual of candles quietly wired themselves in. You didn't keep the memory of that day. You became it. Every one of those erased 1,000 days is still here folded invisibly into who you are. The blank space where your first memories should be isn't empty. It's load-bearing. So you can stop straining to remember them. They were never meant to be watched again. They were meant to be lived once and then quietly baked into you forever. Which is why you'll never recall your happiest third birthday. And it's also why, in the only way that counts, you never actually lost it. The candles are out. The day is gone. And you're still standing in its light. You had the cake. It turns out you gotta keep it too.